Welcome to the Soul of Medicine. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode with Janet Weber from Canada. So excited to have you here. Welcome.
Oh, it's delightful to be here. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so I guess I should tell everybody how we got to this point. So it was about 2020. I had just gone through a divorce in October of 2019. And I had always been intrigued by the Conscious Uncoupling book. I know Gwyneth Paltrow kind of made that famous. And, you know, it was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, she's like vacationing with her ex and everybody looks happy. Like, how do you do that? How do you do that after you've gone through such experience? And, you know, some of it was like just emotionally, you know, traumatizing. And how does one end up at that place? And, you know, for me, I love that idea of going through this transition and not having to harbor a lot of resentment and fear and all of that. I literally did not know how to get there, right? So
Catherine Woodward Thomas.
Yes, Catherine Woodward Thomas. And she said something in the book about how when people separate or get divorced, well, in the past, if that was to happen, it was by death or maybe out of the normal, other than a choice to get out of the relationship. And she mentioned something about how we just sort of don't match anymore. You know, it wasn't like something was overtly wrong with either party, but, you know, sort of this outgrowing of the relationship and that was it. But, you know, how people, it has to be dramatic to be able to separate, that somebody has to be really mean or there has to be some tragedy to have to choose to transition out of a relationship. So I thought that was really profound. Could you speak to that a little bit, and then we can get more into what conscious uncoupling is?
That we've been trained and conditioned and programmed to that you have to hate each other too. There has to be abuse or something really severe or hatred. You just don't choose to separate for any other reason. So like you don't have anything in common anymore, or your soul's paths are going in a different direction, or you've harvested the learning from the relationship and there is no more learning to be had in that relationship. I mean, there's just so many reasons why we might choose to, you know, separate these days, and that just hasn't been the case until, you know, pretty recently in history. We are really conditioned to that the ending of a relationship is a failure, and you have to avoid that failure, you know, at all cost.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be a failure.
Right. And I remember saying, or maybe you said it to me, it's like the contract's over, you know, and contracts can just be over and all of that stuff around it. I feel like, I mean, now looking back, it doesn't really have to be there. You know, it doesn't, if you don't want it to, but like you said, it's that conditioning of having to have something dramatic and traumatic to give you the excuse to do that. You know, and this goes with, you know, transitioning out of a job or leaving the city that you're in, or friendships, for instance. We grow and evolve, and sometimes, you know, the energies don't match anymore, and that's okay. That is just what you're saying. It's like it's a part of life, and it's really okay. And if we can respect it.
It is now. I mean, it is now. I do actually think that, you know, many years ago, it wasn't so much of a thing because we weren't evolving at such a rapid rate. And everyone was kind of, you know, vibrating at the same, you know, kind of vibration. And so there just was more equality. There wasn't so much divergence in our soul's path as there used to be. So safety and security was the reason primarily to stay together. It wasn't for, you know, satisfaction or to find meaning or anything like that. It's a modality of separating that really calls out the best in people. It really speaks to their higher self, to their true self. And it helps us to align with that rather than the fear-based, egoic-based human kind of emotions. So at the core of it is that we harvest the learning that the relationship offered, and it calls us to grow and to reflect on ourselves as to how we created what we, it's not fault or blame or anything like that, but we're all creating. We're all creators. We are creating our experience every minute of every day. And that might be something we want or something we don't want, but we are creating it. And so it really helps us to see how we get out of victimization, feeling victimized by our circumstances, victimized by the other person, and to really step into that power to co-create with life. And kindness, that to me, kindness is a big thread through the whole thing, calling out the best in us and others and kindness. And so it's aspiring to leave a relationship in a way that doesn't do damage, that doesn't damage ourselves and others and our children, to separate and leave that part of our lives so that where we feel whole, where we feel intact, where we don't feel fragmented and traumatized. I mean, ending a relationship, even if you're the one that decides to leave, is traumatic. It is really, relationships are such a container of safety for us. And so it's really one of the most difficult things that we'll ever go through. And we haven't been taught how to navigate that. Just like we haven't been taught how to navigate relationships, we haven't been taught how to end relationships. So it just offers a way of ending relationships so that there's less trauma, that the love that brought you together can be preserved in a way that, it just feels good. Our souls, our soul self, our higher self, our wise self, our God self doesn't want to hurt people. We don't want to be hurt, and it doesn't want to hurt others. We feel bad when we hurt others. We're here to hurt others, okay? On a grand scheme, that's the whole deal here. We come into separation to experience fear, so that we can find our ways back to love. But it's the less damage we can do in the process, the better.
One of the interesting things too that in your coaching that I felt anyway was to bring it back to me, to okay, maybe this is something that you didn't want in the relationship. It's actually responsibility. How did you train the other person to not see you? And it wasn't even just your partner, but your whole life. So what you were saying about the victimization, and when you start to take ownership, then you have the power to change it. And, you said also that it's about you becoming all the things that you want. It's not that the other person, you find that person who has this list that you want, but you are the person that embodies, for example, if you want your partner to be safe and you ask me, are you safe with you? And I was like, ooh, let me think about that, and sometimes yes and sometimes no. So
yeah, it's a bit of a shock sometimes to find out that, what we're accusing the other person of, we're actually doing to ourselves. And that's actually how life works. It's kind of like others are a mirror in a way. They mirror back to us often how we treating ourselves. So a big part of the process is understanding how we're actually participating in what it is we don't want. And by understanding that, we can make a new choice. So the whole thing is really about getting us to a place where a choice point where we have a choice, where we can make a different choice. We're not reacting to the other person. We're not reacting to life. We're actually choosing how we want to react and respond to what life brings us and other people. So yeah, it's a very empowering way to live, to get out of that sense of being a victim of other people. And, you're just treating me this way. You're the bad person. If only you would stop doing this, I could be happy. And then, what happens, we can leave that relationship, but we'll just find another relationship and we'll train that person to treat us in exactly the same way. Because there's a way that, our false beliefs about ourselves, our core wounds, what we call our source fracture, that causes us to behave in a certain way, that then has life mirror back to us that false belief. We'll show up in a certain way and life will mirror that back. We pull on people. If we have a story and we kind of act out that story, and we pull on people to treat us in a certain way completely unconsciously. It's really, really unconscious. But what we want to do is we want to make it conscious so that we are at choice, so that we can make a new choice.
Yes. And that's hard to do sometimes, especially when all those emotions are flying around. It's easier to figure out what's wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. It is easier. It's easier to blame. It's easier to blame. It's easier to look outside of ourselves. It's really a new paradigm to look within and being like, wow, I mean, this is really happening for me to show me something about myself.
Well, one thing you said too was, identifying the patterns that keep you stuck or in these kinds of relationships, and that this is never going to happen again. The possibility that that kind of relationship or situation has the potential of never happening again, because you can change that. And so identifying the pattern of what that's what it is. It's a pattern. It's an unconscious pattern that we keep doing, over and over again. And we're not realizing that the pattern, however we got there, is the reason why we're drawing in this. It's like, again, it's like all men suck, or like, whatever. It's like, well, the common denominator is me. So what am I doing here? So, this is kind of work I would say, for people who really want to figure that out and want something different. You know what I mean? It's not just a soundboard for blaming other people. And I feel also when you coach around what are your preferences, like what do you really want, and really identifying those qualities and embodying those qualities in yourself, then is, I think, well, it was the shift for me anyway. You know what I mean? Particularly when you're so used to wanting other people to do that for you. So could you walk us through what completing a relationship means in your coaching practice and how you would guide your clients toward this?
Yeah, well, that is going to be different for every couple. Every couple is going to, have their different level of what they would consider completion or a success. The most important thing for me is that the learning has been harvested. So there's no longer any resentment. There's no longer any charge. There's no longer any trigger. There's no longer a feeling of you didn't do this. You deprived me of this. So that to me is when a relationship is completed. When you can feel genuine, you don't have to love them, but often you do, because if you get in touch with your own humanity and realize that we're all doing the best we can. We've been given zero tools on how to navigate relationships. Everyone is really, dealing with a lot of baggage here on planet Earth. We're all traumatized. And when we get in touch with that, it helps us to feel a little bit more compassion for our situation, for the other person. And when you can reach that level of feeling like, okay, I know I see the gifts that this relationship gave me. I came in with, probably wanting to learn this, my family of origin, it recreated it for me, and then I recreated it again. But, now I see it, and I'm ready to graduate from this pattern, from this. I no longer need this. It's no longer something that I need to have in my life. And so to me, that's the ideal, when you can really feel love for the other person, for, forgiveness, compassion, and really aspire to do the best you can with your children or whatever. I mean, that's the ideal. And, for everybody, it's going to be different, because maybe not everybody is ready to completely learn their lesson or whatever. But that's my job, is to kind of inspire people to realize how important it is to really harvest the gifts and harvest the learning and harvest the healing, so that they can be free, completely free to go on and, love again, and realize that this isn't a blow to our family. We're going to have an even stronger family. We're going to have an expanded family. And I have a client right now that is so dedicated to experiencing more love at the end of a relationship than there was in the beginning, during the marriage. And it's, it is something beautiful to aspire towards. It's very healing for the soul, for us, for everyone. So my job as a coach is to kind of constantly inspire, hopefully, to take on that challenge and take on that growth and be a leader, be a leader of love in the world.
Did you stumble upon this work from your own experiences? Could you share how this work has impacted your own life?
I was already working as a Calling in the One coach for Catherine Woodward Thomas when she was developing the Conscious Uncoupling program. And so I had taken my training, Calling One training, in 2010. And then she offered the Conscious Uncoupling coach training in 2011. And at that time, I had been through 2 divorces. And I had been through a really, really, really traumatic breakup from a long-term 5-year relationship that ended very badly. And I was really, really, really devastated. I was actually very devastated. I had lots of reasons to be interested in the conscious uncoupling, both personally and, professionally. I just felt that it was just so important, and it resonated with me so deeply. So I took the training in 2011, and then I was working in Catherine's community, supporting her online courses, at that time, and I continued to. And then I became a lead trainer in 2015 when she had kind of taken a break after from 2010 to 2015. Then she launched her first coach training, or I should say it was her second coach training in 2015. So it's been a part of my life for a very long time. I mean, when I left my second husband, so I've had the experience of being on both sides, which is fortunate. I've had the experience of the one being left, which is one experience. It's not without its trauma, but it's different. And then I've had the experience of the one being left. I grew up without a father, essentially from the age of 8, when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer when he was 8 years old, and he died a very slow and painful death. And so I really felt that sense of being without a father growing up, and I didn't want that for my children. So I worked very hard to maintain the relation, a good relationship with both of my exes for the sake of my children. And I just really saw the benefits of doing that. And so in a way I kind of had, lots of mistakes. I'm not going to say there weren't lots and lots and lots of mistakes, but definitely with my second husband, I really held this desire to separate consciously. And I really feel that had so many benefits.
So you've mentioned children a couple times, which was for me too, just something that women, mothers in particular, leaving, it's kind of one of those things where you're worried about or, concerned. I was reflecting back of, of course it was hard for my kids, my daughter in particular. I mean, has excelled at everything. It's beautiful. And one thing I do see in her is that she uses her voice as she knows her boundaries. She knows what she's willing to take on, what would stress her out, how to use her voice to articulate, her needs are and what her preferences are. And I love that mindfulness that she has. I mean, she'll ask me like, Mom, does this sound professional? What do you think about this? But just the whole thought process that she's conscious of how she wants to relate to people, and her ability to self-reflect and know when she's hit her boundaries. I'm not going to say it didn't take maybe a couple of years, but to watch her bloom into that, and people around me are like, you did a good job. And, I kind of have to say that, well, it was me doing my work. Like you said, I don't exactly know how that happened. Maybe I lucked out. I don't know, but.
Well, it sure helped. It sure helped. That's another thing that I feel is important for people to understand, is that what we want to do is we want to liberate our families from these patterns. I mean, these are family patterns. They're ancestral patterns often. And we want it to end. We don't want this to continue. And so the only way for that to really happen is to do the work, because we can tell our children that we love them all day long, but they won't feel it if we are not making an effort to love ourselves. It'll be meaningless. I'm going to tell you something that I'm not willing to do. I want you to love yourself, but I'm not willing to love myself. It's a journey to love ourselves, but we have to really try. We have to really take that on if we want our children to grow up feeling good about themselves.
You said when you went through your one, it was very devastating. Now, do you find at that point, was actually going through this program to learn it yourself kind of the therapy you had around it to kind of come to terms with that and heal from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't healed in any way, shape, or form from that relationship when I, started the Conscious Uncoupling program. And, when I started really diving into these teachings and practices, doing the work of the conscious uncoupling, even though years had gone by, it was when I did my healing, and it was very helpful in healing from that.
Yeah, so breakup. I find that fascinating, because a lot of people will go, like when I hear this conscious uncoupling, oftentimes you think during the breakup, while it's or in the immediate time around that. But, you see a lot of people might not be both parties in the divorce, but one of them might still hold a lot of resentment, and however that might fold. So this is something that can actually support people even after the fact, which is something I didn't really come to conscious thought with. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you haven't really dealt with it, it will be affecting your life until you do. So really there is no time limit. And often, this is more common with the Calling in the One program, is that, we have to, there is a step, there is a chapter in the Calling in the One book about completing the past. So it is really important. You have to complete the past. And if there is a lot of trauma, I will integrate the principles of the conscious uncoupling, or we'll stop and shift to the conscious uncoupling and do the conscious uncoupling before we move on if there's a lot of trauma there.
Janet, could you talk about some of the exercises that you have your clients do? I think every week we had something really profound, so that you can kind of get a taste of what you do in your coaching practice.
There are a lot of practices, and they all work together, and they all are important, and they're all helpful. I mean, I think the two practices that I feel are the most transformative are, most people are walking around very disconnected from what they're feeling and what they're needing, very disconnected from their bodies. And so there's a practice called Inner Sanctuary of safety. So what we want to do is we help people to create safety within themselves, so that they are a safe person to be with for themselves. Often we're not safe people to be with. We're criticizing ourselves, we're mean to ourselves, we're telling ourselves all kinds of nasty things, and that doesn't feel safe, to be in a body with an egoic entity, younger selves, whatever, that are raking us over the coals all the time. So there is that inner sanctuary of safety practice. And depending on the level of trauma, sometimes we add the Tonglen, but that's really getting people in touch with what they're feeling and what they're needing. And it's a very, very, very powerful practice. And it's really a practice that I encourage people to continue to take on. I still do it daily. There's very rarely a day that I go by that I don't do it, because it feels good. It just feels really good to be like, okay, what am I feeling, and mirroring it back? What am I needing, and mirroring it back? So it's deeply, deeply, deeply healing. It also, that helps us to get in touch with our guidance. When you're disconnected from your body and you're not really feeling your feelings, and you don't know what you're feeling, and you don't know what you need, you're disconnected from your inner guidance, from your guidance system. And that guidance system is what is really steering us forward in our lives. And so it's really important to start to hear our soul's guidance so that we can, live the life that we were meant to live, and bring forward the gifts that we were meant to bring forward, and step into our soul's purpose, and, to live a really fulfilling and meaningful life. So that's a really powerful practice. And then another powerful practice is really identifying what those core wounds are, that source fracture story. Really identifying what those beliefs are can help us to then challenge them. Because if we don't know what they are, they're just swimming around down there, and we're going to play out either a fight, freeze, pattern with other people, whatever our go-to is. So to really challenge those beliefs. And so that is a powerful, powerful practice. These are in the book. These are all in the book. And it's helpful to have somebody support you through those practices and guide you through those practices. But they are in the book. And understanding, what those beliefs are and how we've been showing up in the world in a way that's, having life mirror back those beliefs, that's extremely, extremely powerful. That's medicine, Kay.
Mm-hmm. One of the last exercises you had me do was this intention for love, or the new intention for love. And as I was looking back on my emails, I'm like, Janet, all these things came true. I mean, I couldn't believe it, and it was amazing. I'm like, check. And they were deep intentions too. They were very soulful intentions that I think I wanted just for my life overall, not just, in my next relationship. And the things too, when it's not necessarily couples work. I mean, I was doing this work by myself with you. I mean, so all of these things that I wanted, for my new partnership, for my children, for my past relationship, was all because of the work that, you had me do. And I had to sort of hold that space for that potential and possibility. And, it takes time, of course, for that to happen, but it's really, really possible. And it has nothing to do really with the other people, they're just, like you said, profound work.
That's a really important point, and that is that we don't realize the power that we have to have things go in a certain way. We think that, we need the other person's cooperation. We're not going to be able to have a good life if they don't show up and do certain things and, act a certain way. But we really are holding so much power, and we're really holding so much power to influence other people. I mean, we're energetic beings. We believe we're separate, but we're not. We're connected. We are connected energetically and psychically. And what we're thinking and believing is communicated whether we like it or not. And to hold the high watch and to take the high road and say, I'm going to have a good life. I'm going to stand for my life. I'm going to stand for happiness. I'm going to stand for my children's happiness. And I'm going to aspire towards love and kindness instead of fear and depravity. And that is communicated. It's amazing how much it is communicated, and it's important for people to realize that. You don't often see the immediate feedback. You have to be a little bit patient, but we are so powerful. We are far more powerful than we realize.
Definitely. So amazing. So how could someone listening determine if working with with a conscious uncoupling coach such as yourself is the right fit for them and their situation?
Well, the first step would be to get the book and to read the book or listen to the book and really see if it inspires them, if it resonates, and if it feels like something that they want, and it's something that they inspire to do. Really, I mean, that's the most important first step. I mean, some people get a lot of benefit just going through the book themselves, and other people they need support. I mean, I actually think we're all under-supported in our society. We all could use support, way more support than we're getting. And so if you can avail yourself of, the opportunity to be supported and to have yourself be guided through it, it's a pretty big gift to yourself. It's a pretty big stand for yourself too. So, yeah. But I think the most important thing is that the work actually resonates, that there's something there that feels inspiring. If they can't stand to read the book and it's just like, they read a paragraph and then they zone out and, it doesn't make sense to them, then, that wouldn't probably be a good fit. They might be better served with something else.
Not just how really individual this is for someone. I mean, and Kay, you alluded to this earlier. So many times in our life, we have these uncouplings from jobs, from places we've lived, and it's like a micro and macro. So I actually found it fascinating. And the other thing that came to mind is when you recognize, and I don't know, Jen, if you see this with your clients, like say someone uncouples, they divorce from their partner, but they actually have someone else in their life that's that similar person. So my guess is they might learn how to deal with that individual as well, because we do tend to call in individuals. It doesn't have to be another partner that acts the same way, but it could be representative of another family member or something like that.
Absolutely. How we do anything is how we do everything. I mean, if you have a pattern in your life, it's going to be showing up everywhere. It's going to be showing up in your friendships. It's going to be showing up in your workplace. It's going to be showing up everywhere. If you have a pattern of invisibility, it's going to be showing up, everywhere, say, for instance. So, yeah, I mean, taking it on in this area, it gives you the tools to take it on in all areas.
So what's the one piece of advice from your coaching experience that you wish everyone would keep in mind when facing the end of a relationship?
Get them in touch with their future self. I'm sure their future self would say, hey, it's going to be okay. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. There's always, destruction before creation. And I don't know of anyone that is still saying, most people are able to look back on a divorce or separation, and they're able to see the gift in it. They're able to see the good things that came out of it. It's like anything in life. It's like, getting cancer. It's like anything. It's like you at the time you're like, this is the end of the world. But looking back, you always can see how, wow, this is like, it's so much better for everyone. And, if there was a way to communicate that, to just be like, it's going to be okay. It's really going to be okay. No matter what happens, it's going to be okay.
Well, I think that was just the beauty of having you as a coach and somebody saying to me, honey, you're going to be fine. Versus like, oh, your life's a hot mess. Good luck, And your way about you was so validating and so encouraging. I think for me, I needed that because I always was thinking that I was wrong. I was doing something wrong. I'm always doing something wrong. I never do it right. And I remember bringing some kinds of questions to you. And you're like, no, I think that you did that great. I'm like, I did? That was good? Oh, okay. So, yeah, and validating. I think that's a lot of it, too, where I see in people struggling with this of like, I feel this way. My soul is speaking over here, and I can't honor that, and that creates a lot of the tension too. But having you and somebody hold that space of like, listen to that. That's really, that's a lot of wisdom, and helps to build your confidence. So, super valuable, very, very valuable.
Nobody is served when we go against our inner knowing and our inner wisdom. No one is served by that. Our children are not served. Our partner's not served. No one is served. So yeah, it is. It's a courageous path. It takes a lot of courage. I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage to not do it. I think it's even harder to not do it to me. It's hard work, but it's so worth it. And it's so worth it to then start to get the feedback from the external that, we are on the right path, and that love does matter, and love is powerful, and it's the most powerful thing, and it's the only thing that's really real anyway. And to just feel like that's how we want to live, and that's what we kind of stand for.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for the work and sharing your heart and just teaching, us how to be in this new space. I think it's so valuable, and I'm so grateful to have met you, worked with you here today. So how can our listeners connect with you, learn more about you, get your guidance and support?
Yeah, they can go to my website. They can go to, it's Janet at purejoylifedesign.com. That's Janet at purejoylifedesign. And they can contact me through my website. That's probably the easiest way. So, and the best way. And you're so welcome, Kay. I'm so overjoyed, and my heart is so warm and full, seeing how you've taken on the work and really ran with it and have recreated something so beautiful and stepped into such a powerfully visible life, and have this wonderful partner, and it's just beautiful. It is everything that you want.
Yes, It is. Yeah. And more.
and more.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep getting better.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Janet. It was a real pleasure to meet you as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Soul of Medicine podcast, where science meets soul for whole health healing. Are you ready to reclaim your energy, vitality, and soul purpose? Then feel free to head to our website at kcorpusmd.com and schedule an appointment for your root cause review.